Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Brath Wang. Construction of the world's leading chip maker, TSMC's Arizona fab, is near complete. Tech media reported that U.S. President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump had planned to attend the plant's completion ceremony in December. However, TSMC founder Morris Chang said in a recent interview that there will be no completion ceremony. We'll talk about what the incoming U.S. administration could mean for TSMC and Taiwan's chip industry. Joining us today are Jeremy Chang, Research Institute for Democracy, Society, and Emerging Technology, DSET Chief Executive Officer and Director of Economic Security Research, Rocky Urankay, Science Tech Power Research CEO. A very warm welcome to both on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
My privilege. Thank you so much. Yeah.
First, I'll turn to you, Jeremy. What was behind the cancellation?
Well, I think this is a very necessary decision. You know, they need to make this decision based on their political or all the other, the contents that related to geopolitics and the American domestic politics. So the inauguration is around the corner. It's going to be January 20th. And so this is really the end moment of the Biden administration. Of course, CHIPS Act was introduced by the Biden administration, and those US $6.6 billion for subsidizing the TSMC there in Arizona was one of the most critical industrial policy and one of the most critical decisions made by Biden administration. Biden administration deserves this kind of ceremony. But however, for TSMC, of course, from now on, it's more critical for their operation there in the U.S. because they are, again, the new negotiator between TSMC. It's going to be Trump administration. It's not going to be Biden administration anymore. So of course, for TSMC, they have to make a very critical decision in terms of how they have to deal with the coming components there in the U.S. federal government.
Rocky, Jeremy mentioned the subsidy from the United States that came out from the Biden's CHIPS Act. How significant is that when it comes to real terms? Do you feel that with Donald Trump talking about tariffs, and he did talk about maybe taking away some of these subsidies, would that in turn affect TSMC's business in the United States?
Well, I don't think Trump will completely overturn or scrap the whole subsidies, no, because the subsidies were designed and ruled by the Chip and Science Act. It is law already. So the best solution for Trump to do, I think the reasonable move for him is to reallocate all the subsidies to those companies and institutions, because basically the Chips and Science Act is a combination of several funds. No? So those are money. So a lot of institutions, companies are waiting for the subsidies. No? So I think the best move for Trump is to reallocate those money to those people and institutions and companies who align with him. Follow his policies. If you're disobedient, I'll give you less, or I'll give you later. You have to wait longer. I think that's the best way for him to do. And for TSMC, I think it has been announced that $6.6 billion will be given to subsidy will given to TSMC, and it was finalized already last week.
So you believe that will continue to be given to TSMC?
Yeah, I believe it will be continue to given. But as I said, probably I can give you slower, or you have to wait longer. It depends on, it's something we can deal with, we can negotiate.
The tariffs that Trump is proposing, he mentioned that it's a beautiful thing on the Joe Rogan show. How does that correlate in terms of the chip business from Taiwan in the United States?
Talking about tariffs, actually, probably we all know there is an organization called ITA Agreement, Information and Communication Technology Agreement, Information Technology Agreement. So it means those products, information, the communication products are really tax-free to sell among these countries across borders now. So if you like to add tariffs on these products, it's against the rule of WTO. Of course, Trump, he doesn't care about WTO. He thinks it's a useless organization. No? But I don't think if Trump is going to add tariffs on all the countries, TSMC or semiconductor industry in Taiwan will be the first industry, or Taiwan will be the first country to be affected.
So you don't believe there'll be a huge impact in terms of the tariffs on China, given that some raw materials
China will
are
be
from there?
the first one that receive the impacts, and the other industry will be earlier to accept those impacts. I think that's why I think Trump has no concept of ally. He treats all the other countries the same way. Even the European country, they don't think they're allies, so they will deal with them, and they don't want to go into the multilateral organization to deal with them. They like to have one-on-one negotiations. From his point of view, that's correct, because the United States is the most powerful country in the world. If one-on-one negotiations, any deal, he's holding the stronger position. So it's easy for United States to get a better deal. So I think he's going to pick China. And he has a lot of other things on his priority list to deal with. So semiconductor industry and Taiwan and the TSMC are not on the top priority of the list.
So there's not too much concern in the immediate term
Probably at
from
the
your...
present time, we don't need to worry that much.
Let's talk a bit more about TSMC. The company continues to expand its global footprint. The company is building 3 fabs in the United States, with production starting in early 2025. It is also planning a 4th fab in Japan, where TSMC production will start at its Kumamoto plant in December. TSMC is also laying groundwork for a 2nd plant there. Its German fab in Dresden also expects production to begin by the end of 2027. Jeremy, what's your take on TSMC's global footprint, and given some uncertainties that we've talked about?
Well, we are under the era of techno-geopolitics, which means that geopolitics is becoming one of the most critical one of the critical condition for every decision makers in every national state that is considering if they are going to have a future for the most advanced technologies still be dominate or still be have their roles of those countries can play, then the capacity of manufacturing the semiconductor chips is extremely critical. And if we look back into past couple of years, this is a really unique moment for the few human beings. At least we have already experienced 3 decades of globalization. Nobody cares about the industrial policy, but after the U.S.-China escalation of the technological hegemony, and after we experienced the shortage of the semiconductor chips during the pandemic, every national state was restarted thinking about they have to re-embrace the industrial policy. So this is kind of a global trend. This is a kind of global trend that forced the TSMC to reconsider their own strategy, because until now, their strategy for the business model is kind of simple. Like if you want to achieve the best of the margin, then you have to make sure you have a concentration for manufacturing and do R&D. However, you have more and more factors on these global stages requiring you to have your own capacity there in their soil. So you have to diversify now. The diversification is not a business, it's not from the business perspective, right? It doesn't have a good efficiency. On the other hand, it's from the perspective of geopolitics.
Rocky, Jeremy mentioned that there's diversification and sometimes it goes against some business efficiency. But with that in mind, does TSMC moving overseas with its fabs actually diminish Taiwan's competitive advantage? Do you feel that Taiwan, or TSMC in particular, can't maintain its advantage given its chip secrets and all this other technological advances that were originally stored in Taiwan?
The key point for TSMC to maintain its leading position in semiconductor industry is to maintain enough R&D personnel. So far, I think TSMC has nearly 80,000 employees worldwide, and 10,000 R&D people, and 2,000 of them hold the PhD degrees. If TSMC is going to keep the leading position in semiconductor industry, definitely they need more high quality, high calibrated personnel, experts in technology in the future. So they have to attract those experts from all over the world. To attract them to organize a team, that's pretty difficult. No easy job.
But how is that working? Because you see lawsuits being filed in the United States, and you see all these cultural clashes between Taiwanese work culture and those in America.
The lawsuit you mentioned is about 13, 15 people sue TSMC in Arizona. I think that's a minor thing, though. I do not mean it's not important. Of course, TSMC received the pressure when they expand their operation all over the world. They have to meet those culture shocks from all over the world, right? They have to know how to evolve, how to adapt their management culture to keep those, as I just mentioned, those experts or great talents from all over the world. To attract them is very difficult. To keep them, to manage them well is even a greater challenge. So I think TSMC is learning very fast. They know how to do this. It's difficult for them, but I don't think that's an obstacle. It's a hurdle they can never overcome. No.
Jeremy, how do you think TSMC will overcome Trump's request? There are reports saying that the fourth plant is actually to accommodate Donald Trump's requests in terms of building more in the United States. Do you feel that in the long run will benefit TSMC's business?
Well, TSMC has the most bargaining chip with the federal government, right? Because TSMC is dominating the future of the semiconductor manufacturing. I think the question would be whether the ecosystem can be copied and passed it there in the US soil. Because TSMC is absolutely capable of negotiate with the counterparts from Trump administration, say we want more. If you want to invest more in the U.S. soil, then you have to give us more benefit that for us to capable of have the semiconductor ecosystem here in the U.S. soil. Because currently,
what do you say to Texas? Because the governor there, Greg Abbott, has mentioned that there is a better environment there in terms of water, in terms of resources. Do you feel there could be more manufacturing shifted to Texas from
Well, that's
Arizona?
only from my point of view. Texas has better ecosystem compared to Arizona because Texas is traditionally a semiconductor cluster, right? Back into last century, 80s, they has a Texas Instruments there. Currently, Samsung, Infineon, well, those big names of semiconductor players have been investing, has been manufacturing, has been running the R&D activities there in Texas for longer compared to Arizona. So for me, and of course there is a talent pool there in Texas as well. But you still have to compare all of the conditions that different kind of a state that are willing to provide for TSMC. Tax might be a very critical condition as well. So again, it still depends. It depends on the future of the negotiation between TSMC and the state level government or the federal government, trying to figure out whether Texas can really become a more competitive choice for TSMC to invest. But on the other hand, further diversification means less efficiency. So this is a very hard decision if it's going to be made by TSMC. TSMC also always care about the concentration of their activities because you have maintained the concentration of the activities. You can maintain the ecosystem. You can maintain hundreds of your suppliers be gathered together.
So how does it strike that balance in terms of maintaining efficiency and competitiveness?
Yeah, there are two variables in your question. Diversification and efficiency, right? It is reasonable for TSMC to expand the production bases to Germany, to Japan. Even they have the factory in Nanjing already, and a lot of factory fabs in Taiwan. So that's reasonable. It's also kind of diversification. But if they want to, as you mentioned, Texas, actually Texas has better condition, better terms for the semiconductor clusters. The reason why, probably you'll ask, why didn't TSMC choose Texas instead of they chose the Texas, right? Arizona. It was a decision made by the U.S. government. It's a decision based on the political strategy because Arizona at that time was a swing state. So it is not efficient to diversify TSMC's fabs right now to other states. So I think TSMC should stay in Arizona. And the land area in Arizona, in Phoenix, there should be able to accommodate 6 fabs, or you may call 6 phases. Now, it's only the phase 1, the first fab. And TSMC promised the United States government to build phase 2, phase 3. And probably in the future, there will be more phases or more fabs within that area. Let me repeat again. The area now, the land area is able to accommodate 6 phases, 6 fabs. So there's no reason for TSMC to spread out within the United States.
Speaking of TSMC in America, Intel has been plagued by a management crisis, and we've seen drama going on with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, it being delisted. Do you feel this complicates things for TSMC, or do you feel it's an opportunity for TSMC, or Jeremy?
Well, TSMC is much ahead of Intel. So for the federal government, they have to make a correct decision whether they have to distribute their resources to make sure that America can eventually acquire the most advanced capacity of manufacturing the semiconductor chips. So again, for me, from my own perspective, TSMC still has larger bargaining chip to the federal government. And the Intel, I think Intel has a lot of issues. Intel, if you look at the truth, then Intel might not capable of catching up the TSMC's path for, especially on the foundry side. Intel still have some competitiveness in terms of IC design sector. However, the future of Intel is not so bright. So again, this is a multilateral bargaining game. But again, so for federal government, Intel might be less and less choice for them to distribute the resources. And for TSMC, they have to maintain the pace that they make sure their business model still can run the most efficient way, whatever the new factors that coming from the political area, they still have to make sure they can still achieve the goal that they are leading, they are dominating the future of semiconductor manufacturing.
Speaking of new waters in the United States with Donald Trump's presidency, TSMC's Arizona plant will begin mass production of 4 nanometer technology in the first quarter of 2025, with plans to produce 3 nanometers by 2028. The total investment for both phases is about $40 billion, making it one of the largest foreign direct investment projects in U.S. history. Rocky, I'll turn to you. What do you think this means for TSMC? Because there's also word and reporting that Donald Trump could demand that some of that high-level technology be produced in the United States, where originally it was all done in Taiwan. Does that impede competitiveness from TSMC?
You may call it technology transfer. Now, while we were kids, while we were young, we always see American companies coming to Taiwan and transfer their technology to Taiwanese companies now. So I think we should be proud that now Taiwan has the advantage. We can transfer our advanced technology to the most advanced technologically country in the world, U.S. So probably you feel proud. But people here in Taiwan, we're worried that if the leading edge technology held by TSMC were emptied now to the United States. So we're worried that the holy mountain that protecting Taiwan will be lower and lower, then there will be no protection.
But should we be worried?
We should be worried. But, you know, TSMC is only a company. They strive for their interest, for their shareholders. You know, it's easy. It's not easy. Very, very difficult for him to resist any requests from the government, especially government from the most powerful country in the world. So they can only just slow down the technology transfer speed. That's what I think TSMC can do. And as I just mentioned, TSMC has about nearly 10,000 high quality R&D personnel. If they can keep those personnel doing the research R&D job in Taiwan, so Taiwan can still keep TSMC can still keep the competitive core competence here in Taiwan. So I think that's the only way we can do now. So it's very difficult because these are political problems.
And Jeremy, speaking of Taiwanese worries, there's also news that Korea is providing subsidies, and you have Japan providing this new subsidy of $65 billion to enhance or revive its chip business. Should Taiwan be worried with this?
Well, in terms of Korean and Japanese industrial policy, I think European has a similar kind of industrial policy as well, because everybody has anxiety. Everybody wants to embrace the industrial policy. Everybody wants to acquire the capacity of manufacturing logic IC there in their own soil. This is a trend. This is a global trend. However, if you look at each case, so we have to answer your question in each of the cases. I think in Japan's case, it's unlikely. Japan has some kind of condition that benefit for Japan to partially gaining a partial of capacity from Taiwan, from TSMC, because geographically it's close to Taiwan. And or on the other hand, Japan demand the TSMC, step by step to have their capacity there in Japanese soil. And in terms of the clients, because clients now, some of them demanding Taiwan plus one policy, may want to TSMC to diversify their operation from not only centralized here in Taiwan. So Japan has a better competitiveness in terms of the cost. This is the Japan's strength. On the other hand, because Japan has been, they have suffered for 3 decades of lower competitiveness of the semiconductor industry. So Japan has no high talents. When Rocky mentioned about the talents that really they are conducting the core R&D activities. Japan doesn't have this kind of a talent pool. And Japan has no, very, very core suppliers for this industry for a long time. They have many, many legacy companies that used to be strong in the semiconductor industry. But currently, Japan doesn't have this kind of, strong stakeholders in the private sectors to attract the TSMC to work them together. And the most critical thing for Japan is Japan doesn't have clients, because Japan doesn't have fabless companies there. So you don't have clients that require you to manufacture chips there in Japanese soil. So this is Japan's problem. On the other hand, I think for Korea, because Samsung is still competing with TSMC, so TSMC has a concern not to relocate their capacity there to Korean soil. And so Korea has an anxiety. Korea always want to use Taiwan's policy or Taiwan's news as their bargaining chip for the interior policy-making process to incentivize the Korean government to create more and more industrial policy in order to compete with the TSMC. But if you really still focusing on the foundry, then I don't think that Korea has a bright future, right? Because Samsung, they are now kind of losing their competitiveness in terms of a foundry sector. And in memory chip sector, Samsung has a big problem of developing the most advanced HBM memory chips. The SK Hynix, another Korean stakeholder, is much ahead of Samsung's path. So Samsung is in trouble. Of course, Korean central government has they have a holistic industrial policy, want to revive the Korean semiconductor industry. But again, we still have to look at the business side. We still have to look at who is going to still leading the manufacturing process and the R&D process for the logic IC.
So from a business operations perspective, TSMC still stands strong. Rocky?
I can offer my 2 cents about Japan because I paid a visit to Japan early this year. I interviewed very important officials from the government, congressmen, and influential scholars. So I was very impressed. I learned that they have all of them have very strong commitment to revitalizing the semiconductor industry. As we all know that back to 1980, especially 1988, Japan has occupied almost 50%, yes, a little bit over 50% of the global capacity of the chip production. So all of them, those Japanese I met, they all show their very strong enthusiasm to revitalize the semiconductor industry in Japan and try to recover the glory of last century. So I think, and don't forget that the material and equipment subsector in semiconductor industry, Japan is still holding the leading position of the world. So I think Japan has a good chance to recover their semiconductor industry, and we have to keep an eye on them because they will be our great competitors in the future.
Thank you very much for both of your insights today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and see you next time.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world, charted by the freest country in Asia.
Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
Taiwan Plus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.